So thank you guys for coming out to our events. We have these events every week, usually Wednesdays at 9, Thursdays at 8. But you can stay up to date at Students of Dentistry on Instagram or Evolve Predental Pittsburgh. So we have this awesome event on CBSE mentoring. So if our panelists would like to introduce themselves, you guys can go ahead.
All right, guys. Well, I'm Brendan. We're all interns here, but I'm Brendan, and
I'm Peter, first year at NYU with Brendan and Bobby. I went to Penn for dental school, and I guess Temple for undergrad as well. So I'm a Philly guy living in New York right now.
I'm Bobby. I'm from Jupiter, Florida originally. I went to Duke for undergrad, Columbia for dental school, and then I stayed in New York for residency.
All right, so
and it doesn't just have to be, it could be more than CBSE too. It could be really anything. The application process is a stressful, just like getting into dental school, it's stressful. Anything we can answer, from general motivation questions to literally like hours of studying the CBSE. Let's go in right now. This hour is for you guys.
Yeah, so we have our questions prepared, but if anyone has questions, feel free to unmute yourself or answer or drop them in chat. So our first question that we have was, what was your journey from dental school to OMFS residency like? How similar and different is it to applying to dental school?
Bobby, why don't you start this off, and then we'll go back and then we'll go forth like that.
Yeah. So my journey from dental school to OMFS, or from undergrad to OMFS? From dental school, right?
Yep.
Okay, so my journey from dental school to OMFS is I originally came into dental school wanting to do general dentistry. I thought that was really cool. I thought that, originally I thought being able to kind of own your own office was great, and also being that general dentist that was just kind of a jack of all trades, like someone walking in and being able to kind of treat all aspects of their needs in terms of oral care, whether it be a cosmetic, restorative, get them out of pain. I thought that was great. That was my original goal about it. And then I went to Columbia, which was a heavily specialty focused school for a lot of students. And I got exposure to a lot of different specialties. And one of those, was oral surgery. And in oral surgery, I got to do things like extractions, and also I went into the OR. I got to see a lot of the cases and stuff like that, and I realized the procedures that they were doing, like the stuff that they were doing, were like the kind of stuff that really interested me, that I found really intriguing, and also just the biomedical background. Being able to kind of understand the patient as a whole, rather than just the oral cavity or just the mouth. That was huge for me. I thought that was wonderful, and that's something I wanted to do. And eventually I pursued it. I took the test. A lot of things just kind of fit together for me, like the biomedical sciences part, and also just finding the right mentors along the way, right people to talk to that kind of guide you, and also the kind of people that you kind of look up to, that you want to work with in the future. That was big for me. And that's kind of what got me on this path towards oral surgery. Even though I do think it's just a long commitment. It's a big commitment, right? It's a long process, especially I'm on the 6-year route. So it's a big commitment. It's a long process. And, but yeah, no, I've enjoyed it so far, and it's been good. I'm glad I made the decision.
Yeah, just to kind of piggyback off of that, I think, we're all the three of us are pretty like-minded. I think we're all going to kind of be saying like similar things here. Again, when I first got to dental school as well, for me, it was either between general dentistry or oral surgery. I wasn't really interested in any other specialties. I wasn't really a big fan of root canals, and ortho was a little bit too hands-off, but oral surgery is very hands-on, although you're doing, different procedures than general dentistry. And, to me, a big thing when I first got to Penn, and I encourage you all to do this at your dental schools or wherever you are, is to find, mentors. So I had some great mentors that I reached out to very early on. I had an interest in research going into dental school, and I kind of went that route with research, and I really tried to do as much as I could. And then, of course, I went into the OR to shadow, and I did some externships, and I really just loved the procedures. I like Bobby, I like formulating like those big treatment plans as well. But it's also nice on the other side, it's nice interacting with patients on a monthly basis, but every now and then it's also nice to just like place a couple implants, do some wisdom teeth, and you kind of move on with your life. So that was kind of a nice thing too, honestly, for me for oral surgery. And again, the biomedical thing as well. I'm also one of the 6-year residents, and that was something that also interests me. Just get a more like holistic viewpoint to the human body, and you're able to treat someone medically in a better sense. So yeah, it was kind of a combination of all those things throughout dental school that kind of led me to this point here.
You're on mute.
Thank you. For those of you that don't know, NYU has 2 6-years and 1 4-year. So that's why Peter and Bobby, they were saying they're 6 years and I'm the 4-year guy. My journey started way back in high school. I was looking to go to med school, and basically I was going to the gym, and there were these 3 guys. The gym community knew them as the Men in Black, and they knew I was studying for medicine, potentially medical school or dental school, whatever. And one day they were like, well, go ahead and take the MCAT, but come in and see what we do. Like, come and shadow us for a day. Why not? It'll be fun. It'll be good, right? And these guys, they were hilarious. Everyone loved them at the gym. They were funny. They were yoked. Oh my God, they were ripped. And I was like, I kind of want to be these guys. And so I went in and shadowed them. There was 2 cosmetic dentists and 1 oral surgeon. Obviously, I fell in love with the oral surgery, and didn't even take the MCAT, took the DAT, went to dental school, and just full steam ahead into here we are, oral surgery. And it was so hard. I know all of you guys are probably going through, it's such a stressful time, but I think we all need to hear once in a while that there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and it's there. You just got to keep aiming for it. You got to take every day, one day at a time, and you'll get there.
All right, thank you. Our next question is, what advice do you have for dental students interested in OMFS and they're just starting their prep for CBSE?
Oof, well, you got to really see what motivates you the most. What really inspires you, because obviously everyone loves something within dentistry, whether it's one specific field, whether it's all of them. You want to hone in like what really drives you to study for the CBSE. It's no walk in the park. And Bobby and Peter know that much more than I do. They crushed it. They have 2 of the top scores in the country. So questions specific to the exam, I think they are the best people you could possibly ask for that. You really need to have, it's hard. I mean, studying 10 to 15 hours a day for multiple months, like 3 to 6 months, you need to be able to tell yourself, like, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to do it for that long of a time period. And this is why I'm doing it. I think you really need to shadow. You need to meet, just like Peter said, you need to have the best mentor in the world that's personalized to you for you to be able to crush it. And you will. Peter, what do you think?
Yeah, so I think the most important thing here for taking the CBSE is that you have to be fully committed, so like Brendan said, you want to make sure that, you want to do oral surgery. So even before you take the test, before you start studying for the test, I think you should, reach out, go into your oral surgery clinic or go into the OR and make sure that's for you, because in order to do well in this test, and scores are just increasing essentially every year. You want to make sure that this is what you want to do. And again, every school is different. So Penn is a little bit more challenging. We have a pretty intense, I guess, clinical schedule. We're in the clinic pretty often. It's graded. We don't have a medical curriculum. I'm sure Bobby could comment on that at Columbia, which definitely helps. So, if you're an undergrad, I don't know if there are any undergrads in here, I would definitely suggest that you look for a school, and Brendan went to Stony too. You look for a school with a medical curriculum, integrated medical curriculum, because that'll really help you kind of focus on CBSE. And a lot of those professors in the medical school, they kind of teach for step 1, which is essentially CBSE. But you could definitely do it at a school without a medical curriculum. You just have to make sure you're very organized and you are committed to to OMFS. And I'm sure we'll go into more detail regarding like study materials in a little bit, but I think those are kind of the two big things for me.
Yeah, I definitely agree. When it comes to that, I think, just to echo on that, you got to find a way you have to find intrinsic motivation somehow, right? Like it's more than just, I want this score, because it's very hard to force yourself to do something you don't want to for like a 6 months period, because that's how long people usually spend studying for this, as like a 3 to 6 months period. It's so hard to force yourself to do that if you can't see like a clear, definite goal at the end that you really, really want. If you can't see that, then your question to yourself is, why in the world I'm doing this? And then you'll just lose motivation. And then what Peter kind of said about having a biomedical background or going to a school, it is true that some schools are just geared towards the easier time studying for these things. Like I think Columbia is one of those schools where it was just easier. Like I think the way of studying for the CBSE has totally changed in the past 4 years too. Like when I first started dental school, what you would do is you go through all your dental curriculum, and then at the end, you would take that 6 months, to study everything. But nowadays, like I see people starting out first week of dental school, and they're like already going through all that step 1 and CBSE stuff along with their your medical or dental school curriculum. They're studying during that, and they're taking their tests earlier, and they're doing exactly what the med students are doing in preparation for step 1, and they're doing better on the test because of that. So that integration definitely helps now these days, I think, partly. And also, I think there's something to comment on the age of COVID, is that it's conducive for you guys, I think, especially if everything is still Zoom, right? Like, and you can watch your lectures, and you don't have to go to lecture and sit there and listen to someone talk on normal speed for 2 hours. You can just listen to it yourself, go through the study material, the board, like the step 1 or CBSE relevant study material alongside it. Make your own flashcards, do it on your own studying time. There's something to be said about that. Could be really, really helpful. So I wish you guys good luck if you're just starting out on the CBSE, and also if you're about to take it in like a week or two.
Thank you. So going off this exam, I know there's probably some undergrads, pre-dentals in this Zoom. So can you guys explain to us, the difference between taking the CBSE and the DAT? What are the differences in like the subjects that are accounted for? And yeah, I know Brendan, you talked about your study schedule for a bit. Like you study for 3 to 6 months. I mean, that's kind of similar to the DAT, but I'm sure you guys have more knowledge than me. So.
Yeah, I hit about 3 months, and we could go even more in depth into that. But honestly, 3 months probably isn't enough. I mean, you got to give it your all, and then now multiply that by, sometimes you're spending the entire day in clinic, so you get out at maybe 5, then you have until like 10, 11 to study that night. I was doing, as soon as I would get out of clinic at 5, I would run to Panera Bread. I'd sit down, I'd pop the AirPods in that have noise canceling, and I would study until 10 o'clock when Panera closed, get up at 6 a.m., do another block of UWorld questions, try and review them throughout the day, lunch, whatever, and then right back to it at 5. What about you guys? How was yours? Even like on top of clinic, that is not easy.
Yeah, so I took it the summer going into 3rd year of dental school, which is when you start clinic. So I started studying probably like in May or so, and I studied for 2 to 3 months. And I took it for the first time, and then I took it again the following test, which was like in February. In between, after I took that first test, I took like 1 to 2 months off just to kind of recharge, and then I did like another 3 months again, essentially. It's definitely, I would suggest for those of you who are in dental school, I would suggest that you guys try to take it during your didactic years, during your first 2 years, just because at least at Penn Clinic, it gets like really crazy. You have a lot of lab work, you have all this stuff going on, and you get some time off in between like your first and second year. I just suggest you try to bang it out then. The formula to do well in the CBSE, there have been students who have been doing very well in the CBSE for years, and it's pretty much like out there. There are some really good study materials. And you just have to kind of just go through it. Just going back to the question that Jada asked, the DAT is kind of broken into like those those 5 sections or whatever they were, like Gen Chem, OChem and all that stuff. The CBSE is essentially an abridged version of step 1, which is the test that all medical students take before they kind of start their residency programs. So it's definitely more medical based. There's kind of like clinical silhouettes and things that you have to kind of read, and you answer questions. Again, it's all multiple choice, but it's more medical based. So you're looking at like organ systems and pharmacology and things like that. So it's a little bit more in depth, but it requires like the same amount of dedication, honestly. So in total, I probably studied like 6 months for two takes. So
Yeah, I did 6 months as well. I started in January of my second year, and I finished in July, or maybe like 7 months, I guess. I started in January, like late January of my second year, because that was when I took boards part 2 for dental school, and then I finished right up until the end of the test, which was like late July or mid-August of my third year, like the very beginning of my third year. And it definitely took a lot out of me, especially when clinic started, because kind of what Brendan mentioned, the whole thing about having to wake up early in the morning before clinic to get like an hour or 2 in, and then also finding the motivation to do it after clinic when you're physically tired, right? Like there's definitely a difference between mentally tired and physically tired. It's like if you're mentally exhausted from something, you can kind of go, take a break, go watch TV for half an hour, come back. If you're physically tired, you literally just want to go to sleep after, just as a beginning dental student after seeing 2 patients. And it's very, very hard. In regard to the DAT versus the CBSE, the DAT, you guys probably recall, is very much like memory based, right? It was very much memory based and factual, whereas this test is more like second or third step knowledge application. If you knew the knowledge behind something, you'd also have to be able to reason out the mechanism that causes that's behind the knowledge, and the answer would be the mechanism, or something related to the mechanism. It wouldn't be the exact answer itself. So it's a deeper level of understanding. It's really a test of how much you understand versus how much you memorize.
Awesome, thank you. We were DM this question. Do you have any advice for current dental students who have been shadowing? Even as of this week, only D3 and D4 students are allowed to do rotations, and most private offices don't want to take that risk.
Shadowing is in before dental school?
I'm guessing so. The person that DM'd this may be able to speak on that. They can drop that in the chat or so.
Sure. Just really quick to answer that. As far as shadowing goes, prior to dental school, there are several accounts. I know Fresh Dental Shadowing, Dental Shadowers, and there's also another one that has like a tannish color to it. These are 3 accounts that are doing massive. They're breaking boundaries right here, where practices aren't willing to take on people to shadow during times COVID, post-COVID. It's still getting back to normal. They're making events like ours where, they're taking on clinicians that are giving presentations, running you through what they do in the day, the operations that they do, the procedures that they've done, what they're looking to do going forward. Just so much you could do with that. And actually, it's a great question, because we're looking to change something within Top Professional Self, where we're bringing the shadowing aspect to something you could actually make applicable to your resume when you apply to dental schools. So there's something coming. I don't want to reveal that yet. As far as during dental school, shadowing, the closest thing to that for oral surgery is externships. The magic number to get is 3. You do them for about a week. Maybe they'll ask you to come back and get a second try. Anything besides that, as far as shadowing goes, Peter, Bobby, you think is anything, right? That shadowing's usually prior to dental school. Would you guys agree?
Yeah,
I'd say
I'd say shadowing's prior to dental school. And also, even if you shadowed dental, like even if you shadowed oral surgeons during dental school, they still most likely wouldn't be able to write you a letter of recommendation unless they were also affiliated with the university. You know, because a lot of these programs, they're looking for full-time attendings. Those are the kind of letters they're looking for, not private practice oral surgeons.
Okay, I think our next question was, how do internships work? And I think Shireen asked that, and how many are accepted to a program after intern year?
So yeah, I saw the dialogue in the chat. I think Shireen is asking about non-cat positions.
Definitely non-cats.
So,
oh yeah.
Yeah. So every program, well, not every program, but many programs, you know, in the United States, they take, so categorical interns, I guess, or interns or PGY-1s, it's confusing, but categorical interns are what we are. So we're, you know, members of the program, I guess. We're going to matriculate into PGY-2 and so on. There's also non-categorical interns, which is what Shireen is kind of mentioning, I think. So these are essentially, you go to a program and you spend a year there, okay, and you're essentially an intern, but you don't matriculate to PGY-2, but you get all the experience that an intern gets, and it looks great on your CV. So typically people do these when they don't match into a categorical position, and you know, I forget what the exact question was. How many are accepted to a program after intern year? So you're not guaranteed like an acceptance to that program, whatever program you're interning at. I'm sure, you know, they look at their own interns, their own non-categorical interns highly. But again, it's not a guarantee, but it's certainly something that'll boost your application if you don't match to a program as a categorical intern. So it's something that, you know, is really something great. You get a lot of good experience through that.
Okay, awesome. We got another question in the chat that asks, could you list some of the resources you guys use for the CBSE?
I mean, there's mainly like, I guess, what would you say, guys? Like 3 or 4 big ones. You know, first aid obviously is kind of like your encyclopedia for the CBSE. It has everything you need to know, you know, cover to cover. There are things that help you kind of retain and memorize the information. I was talking to Ashley about this in the chat, but one thing is Sketchy Micro, Sketchy Farm. Okay, so they kind of have like, I think they're technically called memory castles. They're pretty much like illustrations that help you memorize things about like micro and pharmacology. So that's something that's definitely essential. And then a lot of people like to use Pathoma for pathology, which is essentially like first aid, but it's just strictly about pathology. And there's also like associated videos that go with that. So those are like the 3 main things that I used. And, you know, what I mentioned to Ashley is that, you know, in order to retain the information, especially for like pharmacology and micro, you use an app called Anki, which is essentially just like flashcards. And they kind of go through, you know, whatever you're trying to study. There are like a million decks on Reddit that you can find. There are some really good ones, like Zonki is like a really good deck that has pretty much like all the information you need for CBSE. And you can kind of just work through that. So yeah, the big 3 for me were first aid, Sketchy, which includes micro and farm, and then Pathoma.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. So you have to, if you want to set up like your studying materials, it's first of all, when you're trying to set up your study materials and what to study, try to keep it simple and try to keep it, you know, try to find materials that are very encompassing and don't have too many different sources, because it gets very complicated when you're doing like 5 different sources, right? So for, like Peter said, you have to find, there's stuff that helps you with knowledge acquisition, and all that knowledge is in this like encyclopedia looking thing called first aid. And all the other resources are kind of, the knowledge acquisition resources are to help you understand and memorize and retain that knowledge, right? And that stuff is like the Sketchy Micro, Sketchy and Farm for microbiology and pharmacology, right? Pathoma for pathology. And I know a lot of people like to use Boards and Beyond as well. They'll do that along with their classes. They'll use that to understand physiology and pathology. So that's everything that's covered in first aid, basically, like the drugs, the microbes, the path, and the physio. Everything's covered in there. Everything's explained to you. And now, after watching and using those resources, you need a way to retain it. So how do we retain it? Well, you do flashcards. We can make Quizlets. We can find pre-made Anki sets that a lot of people like to use, right? So once you get all that knowledge in, or you do your a certain amount of learning a day, you have to kind of be able to apply the way to do that is to do practice questions. And the best practice question bank out there is you go through these, you understand connected to everything else, how the heart is connected to the lungs, and it's stuff like that. It'll really help you throughout the process if you kind of keep the amount of resources you use, I would say, to less than 5, and you keep it simple. I think that's the best way to go about it.
Something that Peter said, Bobby said here is so important. Keeping it simple, because the first time I took it twice. The first time I took it, I found myself bouncing around between 7 different thing. Oh my God, he said this, she said this, that guy on that podcast said, no, you have to find a handful of things that you could stick to, that's realistic, that you could get through each day of the week, right? And then Preeti asked, what about UWorld? Yes, absolutely. But the initial question was resources. So what Peter had said were these several things that we go through for the resources, and then you slam UWorld. Those are it's a question bank, but like what you refer to, resources, Anki, first aid, sketch sheet, pathoma. I think that was answered excellently, Bobby and Peter. That was great.
All right, so the next question is going to shy away from the CBSE, but so I believe you guys started your internship probably like a month ago, but given your experience so far, how is residency different from dental school? Is it more studying, less studying, or the clinical hours like?
Oh man, I'm gonna jump in on this one. Last week I was on trauma call, so the big one, 3 times last week: Sunday, Wednesday, Saturday, and so first of all, dental school is like, oh my God, the worst thing. Like, oh my God, my drill, my my drill bit, it went into her tongue. Oh my God, I saw a little bit of blood. I think there was a drop. Well, last week, Wednesday night, 1:30 in the morning, I get a call in. And there was a kid, some guy was slashed across the face. Okay, his nose was hanging down here. And here I am playing around with teeth 2 months ago. And I got to put this guy's nose back in its place. He was breathing through the bridge of his nose, right? So you have to do like deep sutures with a certain suture, like the string, so to say, that resorbs because it's inside. And then you stitch up the skin on the outside, right? And this is all done. And like, this was 2 o'clock in the morning. I think that's a good way to answer it. And by the way, you didn't just get a full night's sleep. I didn't sleep 12 hours the night before. So it was a great week. It was a great week. What do you guys think?
Yeah, it's definitely different. You're not studying anymore, really. If you do the 6-year track, you're going to go off to medical school. So you do medical school for like 2 years essentially. So you'll be studying that. But in terms of when you're on service, it's totally different to dental school. Like Brendan said, you're kind of thrown into this new environment too. You have a hospital setting here. It's a lot more faster paced, and depending on where you are, we're like in the middle of New York City, so you see like a lot of crazy things. See a lot of crazy patients you wouldn't normally see like in a dental school setting. It's vastly different from dental school. But again, if we kind of circle back, and if you know that this is what you want to do with oral surgery, then you're going to be like so hyped to do it. You're going to love every second of it. I think all of us, we go home and we're pretty happy. It's definitely faster paced, but if oral surgery is for you, then you're going to really enjoy it.
I think I can pretty much speak for my co-residents, but our experience has been really good so far. I would say that, you get a lot more independence than in dental school. Like, how in dental school, like everything you do, you kind of have like each individual step, you're waiting to get approved by a professor. They have to swipe off and all these things. But as a resident, you get a lot more independence. And, with that independence comes a lot more responsibility as well, because you're taking care of patients now. And you're, especially in oral surgery, you're taking care of patients who a lot of times are very sick, so you don't want to mess up. You don't want to kind of, and you can prescribe medication, you can change someone's orders, you can do all these things, and you're responsible for them, in that way as well. So it's definitely a lot more independence, a lot more freedom to kind of learn and do your own thing. And also at the same time, the responsibility that comes with it.
Great, thank you. Speaking of like complex procedures, are you finding that dental school prepared you and your dexterity well for those types of procedures?
I think oral surgery is very different from dental school dexterity. I don't know if the two translate really. I really don't. I think there's probably papers published looking at if like oral maxillofacial surgeons have an easier time learning some of the surgical principles just because of how dexterity intensive dental school was. So it's but I don't think so. I think, like suturing, stuff like that, like cutting a flap, things like that, those are skills that you really don't have that much practice in dental school. So, and you're going to do a lot of that in oral surgery. So you're just, it's a lot of practice. That's what all those trauma nights on call are for. All those suturing up, lacerations in the emergency department are for, is kind of practicing those dexterity skills. So I don't think dental school necessarily has a job to prepare you for the dexterity required in surgery at all. No, I think you just learn as you go and you get better as you go.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think if anything, you need kind of more dexterity in dental school and like in dentistry. If you could cut like a really good class 2 or do like a really nice crown prep, you're gonna have like no problem in oral surgery. I mean, there are very, very, intensive things that you have to do. Like if you're doing like microvascular nerve repair, obviously that requires a lot of dexterity, but extracting a tooth, it doesn't really require all that much dexterity. It's mostly just kind of elevating a tooth out. It's not really rocket science in that regard. But I do think, I think if you're doing well in dental school, you're not going to have an issue in oral surgery, honestly, dexterity wise.
100%. You'll know exactly where you are as far as dexterity goes. There's a lot of confidence. There's a lot of generalized knowledge in the medical field. You need to be very aware of patient's condition medically in oral surgery. And I mean, you can't really learn that to too much of an extent in dental school. Dexterity wise, you will be fine. I think it's really interesting. I was talking to a doctor one day, one of the doctors at the hospital, and he was saying how their medical students, sometimes the extent of the hand skills that they get during medical school is suturing up a patient at the most. And here we are in dental school. I mean, you're starting doing crown preps, but like the tiniest micro dexterity procedures in dental school, doing whatever class 2, 3, 5 preps you're doing. That's a very micro level. I mean, you're looking through magnifying glasses on your loops. It's safe to say, at least an intern year, I would rather have, a dental student be stitching up my face than a medical student. Just, I don't know, interestingly enough. Yeah, dexterity, you're fine. That's the least your worries.
All right, thank you. Our next question is also from the chat, and it's asking, when going on externships, what are the most important things to know that residents ask, such as head and neck anatomy or procedures?
Actually, one of the recent questions of the day on our account, on the Instagram account at NYU is, after a 4-1 osteotomy, what is the blood supply to the maxilla? Now, this is one of the doctors at Montefiore asked the externs while we were there, but the bottom line is it doesn't really matter. It's how appreciative you are at the externship itself. It's how much you're willing to learn, how it's respect, it's willingness to learn. How teachable are you? How quickly you can pick things up when you're taught it. You know what I mean? You can't necessarily become prepared for an externship. It's what you do while you're there. It's how you act, how you carry yourself, and how willing you are to contribute, right? What do you guys think?
Yeah, I don't really remember like preparing anything for externships. I think just go in like with a really good mentality. You know, always offer to help. You know, a big thing that we like in externs is, you know, people who like to write notes and who are good at writing notes. You know, it saves a lot of time. But again, you know, you just want to just help with anything, you know, and just make sure you leave like a good impression. Try not to be on your phone too much. That's something that I try not to do when I did my externships, and just be, you know, as involved as possible.
No, I definitely agree. There's you're an extern, right? You're not really expected to know anything. You know, there's not much I do think you're expected to know some head and neck anatomy. Like whatever they teach you in dental school, yeah, know that. You know, like know the arteries and stuff like that. That's something to know. But like oral surgery related, especially like specific oral surgery things, you might impress someone here or there who are really into like asking you questions, but you really aren't expected to know much. And even as interns like us, by the chiefs and also the faculty, like they don't really expect us to know much, you know, because we're learning. We're first years. We're not expected to know much beyond the basics of whatever we learn in dental school. But there is that expectation of like willingness to learn, you know, a desire to learn, a desire to help, a desire to be a team player, a desire to volunteer when something needs to get done, things like that, you know?
All right, awesome. Thank you guys. We have another question in the chat that asks, given COVID, do you think virtual externships would be acceptable for the OMFS applications?
For externships, you said?
Yes.
Yeah, so I think yeah, they were definitely acceptable for our year. You know, if some programs are still not accepting externs for to come visit their program, you know, I think that doing a virtual externship there is something that was valuable. I tried to do as many as I could. You know, they're usually just like a one night thing. You could learn a little bit more about the program and you could put it on your CV. So, you know, and think about it, if you're a program director and you're looking through someone's CV, even if it's a virtual externship, if you see your program's name on that list, that shows that this person's, you know, interested. So I found virtual externships something that was very beneficial, honestly, but it's nothing compared to an in-person externship. You're not going to get a real idea of what the culture is like there, which is something that was very important to me, and like the scope and how the attendings are. So try to do in-person externships, but if it's at a program that you really want to go to and they're not allowing any in-person externships, then definitely do a virtual externship there, or at least just reach out to the program director saying that you'd like to do one at least.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think try to fit in, you know, like I know it's tough during COVID, but try to get some kind of hands-on experience. Virtual externships are like hour-long kind of presentations, and then followed by maybe like a meet and greet with like Zoom breakout rooms or something like that. But that's really not. I would say that's nothing compared to really nothing compared to spending, you know, time at a program, getting to know the people, and also just getting the feel of the program. And I think there are a decent, or not maybe not decent, but like a handful of programs that are open now. So try to get some time in at one of those programs. You know, that'll really, especially in a time of COVID, that'll really show your dedication, and you know, and your willingness to kind of go spend that week there, to kind of live among the residents, you know, in the trenches and everything. I think that'll be great.
100%. I mean, look, why not both? Try and get that in-person externship. Like here at NYU, I think, do they have virtual? We may or may not have virtual, but there's in-person open. I know that there were a couple. LSU had both in-person and virtual. Look around the country. Biggest thing, contact the coordinator. You know, they love to hear that someone's interested. right? They're getting a bunch of applications. I mean, hundreds. How do you single out who you're going to interview, right? You can only give out so many. Next question I saw in the chat was, what are your plans post-residency, private practice, academia, etc.? 100%. I'm going to be going into private practice, and I'm actually really excited. I love mentoring. I always have. I can't express enough thanks to people that have mentored me, and I spend a lot of my time giving back and mentoring those. I mean, I respond to everyone that DMs me. I find them and I try to give the best answer possible. I really do. And I could honestly see myself private practice and doing like 1 day a week. Some like Dr. Kajanis at our program. I mean, phenomenal guy, great teacher, great surgeon. I could definitely see myself doing something like that in the near future.
Yeah, so I think I'm definitely I enjoy research. You know, when I initially started applying, I kind of had this idea of me kind of going into academia and going that route. But you know, things will certainly change over the next 6 years. Things are already changing now, and you know, I'm kind of tiptoeing with the idea of maybe full-time private practice, or definitely at least some kind of involvement in the hospital. Like Brendan mentioned, we have a couple attendings here who come in once a week, and they get to teach and mentor. But you know, that's something that I'll hope to figure out for sure over the next couple of years.
Yeah, I think I have a very similar thing to what Brendan said. Is I'm fairly set on going into private practice, and I think echoing back to what I said about I wanted to be a GP originally, like the idea of being able to work in a private practice setting and maybe own my own practice, that's big for me. And if I'm not the one that's if a case walks in that's like an OR case, like an orthodontics case or a craniofacial case, if I can't do the case, then perhaps there's someone in my practice, who can handle it. So, you don't have to be the one that takes on all the cases. Maybe you're the private practice guy in the location, in the practice you're in, and maybe you have another guy that's more focused on the OR stuff.
All right, so as we approach the end of the event, before we ask our last question, we would like to thank the panelists for, dedicating time out of their day to answering our questions and concerns. Thank you so much for giving so much knowledge and insight into this specialty. And yeah, I'm not sure if they have much time after 9 to stick around and answer any, further questions, but definitely they have their links, or they can definitely drop their Instagram accounts or whatever to DM them. But yeah, the last question is, what are the top 5 traits in the best OMFs candidate to be considered and get admitted into the program?
We could go a little bit later. I mean, we started late because I was on call. That's naturally, this happens. I must say, probably in the top 5 traits, I mean, obviously handsomeness. I mean, look at Bobby. Look at that jawline. You kidding me? Of course he was at the top of their rank list. Tops, obviously, if your school's class ranked, I mean, that's so important. That's important. CBSE score is probably the #1 factor where you get singled out. I thought I was singled out at NYU, but CBSE scores way up there, probably, if not #1. Class ranking is class rank GPA. Let's say that's one and the same, right? And then everything after that kind of falls into play. Your letters of recommendation. This is you're not going to know what your letters of recommendation are. It's pretty much how you carry yourself, how you communicate and work with the doctors at your school, right? That write them for you. And that's kind of, I would put that 3rd on the list, because the program director is going to read that, and that's how they're going to single out the top scores that, wow, great academically, right? Absolute genius, but he can't talk in person. He can't communicate with people, right? That'll be in that letter of recommendation. That's how you get singled out there as well. Number of externships I would put next. Again, the magic number is 3. Try and go to your reach schools. Don't do an externship at a safety school. You're just going to potentially hurt yourself. Go for that reach school. Go to the place that you dream of going to, and maybe you'll land it and get an interview there. Research experience is decent. I know Peter and Bobby will answer this better. They didn't ask me much about my research. I did research, and only 1 out of my 14 interviews asked me about it. All right.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the CBSE is the thing that kind of I think programs might like filter based on CBSE. Some programs might. So that's kind of like the thing that gets you in the door, I would say. Next, I would say LORs are kind of the second most important thing. Program directors, they definitely read those LORs. They comment on them in interviews. They carry a lot of weight because these are people who have gone through residency. They've been tested, they got through it. And these people are writing on your behalf. So the program directors, they often know the people who are writing your letters too. So they're trustworthy and they know that you could survive their residency program essentially. After that, I don't know how much goes into GPA and class ranking, as long as you're not like on the lower end of the spectrum for those two. And for research experience, that was a really big part of my CV. So I talked about that like in every single one of my interviews. Essentially, it was brought up. But everyone's different. Some people do a lot of like community service and all those kind of things. So, it really just depends what's on your CV. Those last couple of things are just like talking points during interviews. I think the interview itself is also very important. So like I said, the CBSE kind of gets you through the door. And then during your interview, how you handle yourself, I think that's something that's also very, very important. Also, because ultimately these program directors and residents, they're going to be spending 4 to 6 years of their lives with you, so they want to be hanging out with people who are fun and enjoyable and things like that. So yeah, that's like my 2 cents.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Dr. Peter. I just have a continuing question. I'm the one who put this question on. You said CBS the first thing to let you enter the door of this pathway. What ideal score, or what is the range of score, like probably last year or this year? Because every year I heard it just a percentile and it keeps on going up and up. So what do you think? Like, I'm a third-year student and I'm preparing for this exam. I know by the time I'm planning to give it in next 6 months, but I just wanted to have an idea.
Yeah, so the number that everyone talks about is like get a 70. I don't know how true that is. Like if you want to go 4-year or 6-year, there was like a paper studied, a paper published like a year or 2 ago that kind of surveyed all the residents, and they found that the average among the 6 years was like a 75, and the average among the 4 years was like a 68 or so. And this was like a year ago. Obviously, it was a survey, so not everyone responded, but I do think that's kind of where it's headed. I think, if you want to be like almost guaranteed a match, I think you just have to break 75. I think that's kind of like the threshold. Obviously, the higher you get, the better. Okay. But I think the 75 is kind of that number for a 6-year and to guarantee 4 years as well. I don't know if the guys want to comment on that also.
Yeah, I agree. I think you should go for 75 and above. I believe in you. I think you guys can all do it. Go for 75 and above, and get a score that you're proud of and you can feel good about. That way, when you go into your interviews, you go into them with confidence. I think that's really important. And I'll kind of address the other questions about research, or I guess we'll keep it simple about the top things that people care about when they're trying to interview you, or figuring out whether or not to interview you. So CBSE, grades, and then I think and interests. I think those are the 3 you should look at. I would put letter of recs on there, but it seems like everyone is able to get good letters of rec. I mean, in which letter of rec is a professor going to say this person sucked, or this person is weak in these areas? If you're going to get a letter of rec from someone, 99.9% chance they're going to say all these good things about you, and it's going to be very hard to kind of distinguish one letter rec from another, unless it's someone that you've worked with for a long time and they know you really, really well, and they know you personally. So those 3 things: grades, CBSE, and interest. And interest and things being able to talk about. And I want to address one last thing, is that we often have these conversations after an application cycle, and the conversation goes like this, like, oh my gosh, like this person had this score, I can't believe they didn't match. That's such a shame for that to happen. That's such a big thing that happens over and over again in every application cycle. And we know people who are 80 plus, who have close to 90 or above 90 in CBSEs, and they don't match, and that's because of the interview. You got to be able to kind of talk to someone and be able to sit there and share your thoughts, being able to express yourself, being able to express what you want to get out of your experience, being able to tell them how your past experiences have kind of shaped you. Communication is huge. It's huge in surgery, because if we don't communicate correctly, people get hurt. Patients can get hurt. That's why we're taught so much about closed loop communication and all that stuff. But they're looking for people who can, who are smart enough to learn the information. And it doesn't take a genius to be an oral surgeon. It really doesn't. It does. And we're all smart enough here to do that. So they're looking for that scores to make sure that, you have the capability to learn the information. But past that, you got to do all in the interview. I just want to stress that.
Something really important to note here is, well, two things. 75 on the Cvsc is clearly the point that you want to aim for. If you're taking it for the first time, I would aim for that 70. Okay. That'll put you in a much more comfortable position getting started on your path into an oral surgery program. The thing that I wanted to touch on that we missed on is also the dental school that you're coming from. Okay. Because there are not every program in the United States has the same match percentage. Okay. I mean, Peter's from UPenn, Bobby's from Columbia, I'm from Stony Brook. I'm not sure their match percentages, but at Stony Brook, my year was 4 for 4 people, which means we had a class of 44 students. 4 of us applied to oral surgery and all 4 matched into an oral surgery program. Okay. NYU's program, I know at least a dozen that apply. NYU's class is 375 to 400 students. I know over a dozen students applied to oral surgery, but only a handful matched. That's a much different percentage. This is very important. I would honestly put that within the top 3 things to consider as well in your rank list of what is given precedent when applying to an oral surgery residency program.
Thank you,
but with that said, if you're at a program that historically doesn't match really well, just make sure you do really well on your CBSE. Okay, put a lot of time into your CBSE and go extern. The program that you're at, it's not going to limit you from getting into programs if you really want to get it done. Okay, there are people at these programs who match, and I bet you that they have great CBSEs, and they show interest, like Bobby said. So don't let that hinder you, or whatever. If you're at a program that historically doesn't do that well, you could definitely get it done.
Should all 3 letters of rec be from home institute, or can it be from OMS program director of the? Yes, letters of recommendation range to either 3 to 5, and one of them is supposed to be the dean. Another one is supposed to be like the head of oral surgery. So then that leaves you 1 to 3 letters from oral surgeons that know you. We were just talking about this before, right, Peter? We were saying they should be from oral surgeons, and here I am, the dope that got it from. One of mine was from a periodontist, but he was my mentor. I did research with him. He mentored me very closely throughout dental school in a personal way that related to confidence and ego. And I love the guy. I wouldn't want anyone else to write one of my letters of recommendation, and it worked out well. Yeah, Peter, we were just talking about this at dinner.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think either try to get them from all OMFS. But if you do have someone that's very close to you in another specialty or whatever, then I think it's also wise to include them, because they could speak on your behalf. But I think try to focus on getting them from oral surgery attendings and things, because again, kind of going back to what I was saying, these people have been through residency, an oral surgery residency. So, program directors will kind of take their word for it, more so than, a general dentist or, periodontist as well. But if they have good things to say about you, that's only going to help you. So just don't get a general letter from a general dentist or a perio, because that'll kind of be a bad look, I think.
All right, well, that was all the questions that we had, but if anyone else has any other questions, you can drop them in the chat. But if not, we can wrap this up. So just feel free to drop anything else in the chat.
Another question that was overlooked in the chat. I'm just looking because I want to make sure we cover everything. This is precious time. All 3 of us were usually one person's on call. So this is a very, very lucky time for us. and I can't appreciate them more for being able to join us with us tonight. One question in the chat was the difference between the dental alveolar specific training between 4-year programs and 6-year, or the 4-year track and 6-year. As far as the difference goes between me and Peter and Bobby, I would say the only we're getting the same amount of dental alveolar training. The only difference is that 2 years they are taking in medical school and they get their MD degree. The training is the same. It's the exact same. So to answer that question, what I would provide you is that you need to look at programs, okay? Different programs have different amounts of dental alveolar programs. Some programs are heavy in the cancer section, okay? They're doing neck dissections 3 times a week. Some programs, Montefiore, heavy in dental alveolar. I mean, they're slamming in implants, they're taking out teeth all day long. Some programs are, broad scope where you're getting both. I think Bobby, Peter, and I, we have been so fortunate to get into Anyway because we cover the whole spectrum. Okay, we get it all. We get heavy dental alveolar. We get neck dissections once, twice a month. I think that's really important to look into. And how do you look into that? You got to go and extern. Those people that go to their programs also externed, right? The interns there externed at other programs. They applied to other places. They have information about other programs. Okay, you got to get out there and try.
All right, there seems to be another one in the chat. It asks, approximately what ranking would you recommend aiming for?
As high as you can, I guess. That's what I would say. Do the best you can. I think that's what I can say for people. If you go to a school that ranks.
As high as you can without changing your personality. Anything else, guys? Anything else? Don't have any sushi recommendations?
So the CBSE has only 3 attempts right now. I mean, initially it used to be long, but now it's only 3 times, isn't it? The CBSE exam.
You could take it as many times as you want, I think, unless it just changed. Is that what you're asking, Pretty?
Yeah. I thought it was only 3 attempts. No?
Did that change recently, guys?
That changed to 5 attempts only now. You can do it only 5 times.
I believe it's 6 times.
Maybe I'll have to go back
according
and
to the AMO's website.
Okay. Yeah, you won't need that many attempts. just use those resources, really take your time and study, and I think you should be fine. But yeah, I wasn't aware of any restrictions on that.
Yeah, I thought it is restricted now, unlike before.
Jesus, yeah, 6 times. I mean, maybe if you started as like a sophomore in undergrad.
And for Daniel, I would suggest going on an externship once you get a little bit of clinical experience. If you want to go on an externship earlier than that, I would suggest going to an externship that's hands-off. So, in the Northeast, there are a number of programs that are completely hands-off, like Rutgers would be a good one to kind of start with if you'd like, if you're in the Northeast. And also closer to when you apply too, and because you kind of want these programs to remember you as well. So yeah, the summer before you apply is a good time, I think, because you have some clinical experience, and plus it's close enough to the application cycle where they'll remember you.
All right, if we don't have any more, do we have a question?
Someone I just mentioned to, just briefly, someone had asked me about externship cycle, exactly what Peter said, playing like hands off first, get a little bit of experience in externships itself. And I would plan, if you do have in mind a certain program or 2 that you want to go to most, I would do that one last, because then you're going to have a lot more externships on your belt. You're going to have experience. You're going to be a lot more comfortable. And when you're doing it last, plan it for July, August, right before you apply or during your application, right? Because just like Peter said, you're going to be fresh on their mind.
Thank you so much. Great help.
Hey guys, so this might be a little bit off topic, but Brendan, Peter, and Bobby, you guys literally went to I just applied to dental school, and you guys literally went to my top 3 schools. And if perhaps I do get an interview, can you guys maybe, if you have time, just drop some maybe tips that can kind of better me for the interview?
Sam, absolutely. You let us know. You came to our event tonight. We really appreciate that. And thank you for participating. Anything you need, please get us on Instagram, DM us, let us know. Any questions you have, let me know.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that.
All right, if no one has any further questions, you guys feel free to leave because it's past our end time. So feel free to leave, but the VAW and the Students of Dentistry team will stay behind if you guys have any further questions. So thank you again to the panelists for coming.
Good luck, everyone.
Thanks for coming out, guys. Cheers.
Shareem was here from past events. How nice. I remember Shareem.
Shareem's gonna kill it. He's gonna do great.
Oh, is he applying to
Yeah, he's still early on. He's still got a couple years before he applies.
He's so nice.
He's gonna kill it. Yeah, he's
so good
gonna
at
do
talking.
very good.
He's so good at talking.
He is. He's great. And you know, the information he gives is spot on. The one thing I would say is he's thinking he's asking questions about non-CADs. I want him to go for it. I don't want him to worry about getting a non-CAD. I think he's going to get in on his first try. I want him to go into the program that he wants to go to. He's going to be fine.
I think
Do you
so.
want to do too?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, good luck to him. He's so sweet. So great.
He really is.
All right, but good event though, Brendan. I think we did well.
I got to thank those guys, you know, Bobby and Peter, that they were able to come out. Bobby just got off call. He's exhausted, you know. Bobby!
Thank you, guys. Yeah.
And he made it, man. Yeah.
I'm good.
so much.
Thank you. Thankfully, Brendan called me, or else I would have slept through it. But it was a lot of fun. Thank you guys for setting this up and hosting everything. It's definitely a great format than just us 3 talking. Yeah, it's great.
It was really great. Thank you. I think you guys are all really different people, so I really like the different perspectives you guys all provided. So thank you.